Okay, we're here. Yay, timeless. I see you made it today. No shenanigans from the app. I love it. I just want to start out, of course, by welcoming you all back to another weekly episode of Advocacy Arena. We're always happy that you choose to gather with us here each Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern or 12 p.m. Central, where we gather to chat and inform and hopefully inspire one another to increase civic engagement. So I thank you guys for joining us in this effort. I will say that both your host and co host come to you this morning with pure dedication of heart because we are both a bit under the weather. I have an agenda prepared, um, but I may not have all of my resources readily available. So if I'm stumbling at places, just bear with me and know that I do have an agenda. I have some resources that I would like to share with you guys. But I'm also going to open it up for a an open dialogue with you guys. So I really want and encourage you to come up and join in the conversation. I do at the beginning have a bit of kind of historical narrative that I want to put over everything. So we're going to, of course, be talking about today's news and events and issues, but I always like to bring that historical perspective because it's so important for so many reasons. And I don't want to go too far in the weeds without giving my fabulous co-host who is here, despite how she feels, but here. And I want to give her an opportunity to say hello and share some things with us before we get our conversation started. And I give us kind of the highlights of the historical events that I would like us to keep in mind with our discussion of current events and issues. So, sister, over to you, my dear.
Hi, good afternoon to everyone on this Monday. Happy to be here with you all. So I don't know if everyone has heard, but many of you know that I always talk about the union and specifically the UAW. So of course today it is with a heavy heart that I let those of you who do not know or are not aware that they were not successful in their unionization voting process this Friday at Mercedes-Benz in Alabama. But I do have to point out that 93% of eligible workers were voting in the process. That's huge. That's a huge number, a huge percentage of. I wish we could replicate that in this country, actually, for 93% to actually show up and cast a vote. So there were 2,045 who voted in favor of the union, and there were 2,642 that voted against. So it wasn't a blowout. Let's be really clear on that. And the union has, I think, 5 days to challenge that vote. They already have, I believe it's five different I don't grievances, I guess, against the company that they've already filed with the NLRB. So we'll have to wait and see how that shakes out. I don't think that they will be challenging the vote, but that is up to the UAW lawyers to look into seeing whether or not it's relevant. But they will definitely be pursuing the allegations they already have against them. So we'll have to see how that plays out with the National Labor Relations Board. And they have to wait 1 year before seeking a new election. I just have to say that It was a very tough campaign with the company actively. I spoke about this last week, but the company actively working against the union. They were not even trying to be neutral or to appear neutral at all. It was Republican backed as well. They did a lot of the company's dirty work by pushing out statements and putting in place, restrictions for companies that did not allow for that actually forced a secret ballot election. And part of the reason that they do that is so that they can put this pressure campaign on workers, and especially if they see it being a close vote, where they can hold these meetings where it's a captive audience, where they can intimidate union organizers, where they can put out any type of visual aids, whether it's leaflets, posters, banners, whatever. And I believe in the last 2 weeks of the campaign, they just basically would put vote no, strongly sending that message. They fired a CEO and a vice president who was familiar with many of the workers there at the plant. It's not like he was new. It's not like he came in from someplace else. So he was very well aware of the issues that these workers were facing, but became the new face of the company there. And this also inspired some of the people who were sitting on the fence to fall for the rhetoric of give him a chance. Although, he had plenty of opportunities to influence conditions and behavior at the plant and did nothing during his tenure as the vice president. But it is what it is. This is the reality of the situation. And one of the biggest things I think is for the workers who were anti-union going around and turning those who seem to be, weaker in their support for the UAW, and they did it successfully. Part of it being that they would say things like, with the union can't put anything in writing, so we don't know what we're actually going to get. These are lofty promises that they're making, and we don't really know if that's how it'll work when it comes down to negotiations, and showing many different anti-union videos from not just Alabama, but other the locales, across the country. But like I said, few few of those were directly tied to the UAW. They were just tied to unions in general, and it made a difference. Didn't make that big of a difference. The fight is not over, and there are still other plants that the UAW is garnering support and will be stepping up their campaigns. So, big win in Tennessee, small loss in Alabama. It's just time to go back and to try to figure out, where things stand. And I'm sure that they will regroup and refine their campaign tactics. And so we will not hear the last of organizing ones in the South. I am certain of it. So I have a few stories that I will be putting up. I wish it were a different story, but it does make me feel proud of the efforts of the workers and the union, with them being as successful as they were. I believe that this is the closest that we've ever gotten to a yes vote, and it just goes to show that when they know, they being opposition of any type of democracy, and that is what the union actually is for workers in these facilities. It is there's never a dirty trick that the opposition will not stoop to in order to win, and they put it on. They apply the pressure significantly towards the end, and to me, it just feels very parallel to what's happening here in our country as we head towards November in our elections. I just really want to point out another thing too. Rather than actually dealing with the grievances of the workers in their facility and allowing them the opportunity to have representation, fair representation of a union, the company spent over $3,500 a day per person, and they had three people from this firm, an anti-union campaign firm, and just times that by the length of time that this campaign has been going on, and we're going to say probably 4 to 6 months so far. That's what they'll do. They'd rather spend the money to usurp you or these workers of their rights than actually give the workers what they are due. And so, like I said, I don't, I know that the workers and the organizers are disappointed. I know I'm disappointed. It kind of broke my heart a little bit because I really was pulling for this to be a win, as I'm sure many people were involved with the campaign. But it is not over, and it is not as devastating as it could have been. So we move forward, and I pray that those workers who are in those in that facility in Vance, Alabama, that they are safe and preserved until they can once again start the campaign for union representation in a year. So that's all I have on that. And I know we have a lot to get to that doesn't involve the union. So I'll turn it back over to Miss D, and we can start our day today with one another here in the advocacy arena. And I look forward to our conversation today. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that union update. And yes, we too are sad that Alabama didn't come into the union family, but hopefully those folks were not deterred, that they are just more determined, and that they can start to um, really learn the truth of what unions and the labor movement can do for not just them, but other workers in the area too. So we'll just keep an eye on things, and I appreciate you giving us the update, although this was a rather sad one. So, as I told you guys, I wanted to just spend a little time starting our conversation off with remembering the historic case that really changed a lot of things in this country, and that is Brown versus Board, which was 70 years ago on Friday, which I think was the 17th. And so I posted a few articles on my timeline, and I have some more. I was particularly drawn to a couple, and one of them I have already posted it, and it's from a periodical called Capital Beat or Capital B, and it's titled Revisiting Brown versus Board of Education's Legacy in a New Era of Massive Resistance. And it says, it's not people carrying racist picket signs, it's political leaders passing legislation that's intellectually ridiculous, one of the experts that they interviewed said. Because, like exactly 70 years after some of the greatest Black legal minds in the U.S. challenged racial segregation in public schools, the assault on diversity in the classroom and beyond is gaining fresh momentum. Black students have long been subtly pushed out of schools thanks to disciplinary problems and other things. But we have a new kind of assault that's occurring today. And it was just last year that the Supreme Court decided on a case. This is called Students for Fair Admissions versus President and Fellows of Harvard College. And I think University of North Carolina was also involved in this case as well. And it unleashed an unrelenting attack on Black intelligence and Black excellence. And this is coming from Cornell William Brooks, a professor of practice of public leadership and social justice at Harvard Kennedy School. He said that it was about the equalization of resources, but it was also about the fact that separate is inherently unequal. And, you know, that's what the case was built on. And we know that a lot of things that I don't think were foreseen occurred, such as Black teachers not being carried over into those now newly integrated schools. So it was devastating in that way. Also, in the fact of our kids not having role models that look like them, or teachers that look like them, um, a sense of understanding really from of who they were and the kind of nurturing that came from the environment that they were in. So we gained some things and we lost some things, and I think about where we are today with this new assault that's going on with education, and it's I think it's intended to take us back to a place of segregation, but it's a new kind of segregation. And it's being done in kind of clever and, some very obvious and not so obvious ways. The voucher scams that are being passed or trying to be passed in various states is one of those ways, assigning letters to schools and kids and these things. Again, it is a new type of segregation. And what happened when Brown was passed, it took the Supreme Court passing another law to make the states adhere to the one that they passed, because some states were very slow to come along. They really, really drug their feet on that. So, after it passed, a year later, they had to pass a law to ensure that it was implemented. And now we're at a place where, we have groups like Moms for Liberty. We went through a pandemic where teachers were attacked for, wearing masks or adhering to science. And then they were attacked for, teaching science. And it was just a really radical kind of assault on teachers and schools. And Moms for Liberty were a big part of that. But, they were kind of the offshoot of an organization that, was formed a few hundred years ago. In 1894, the United Daughters of Confederacy. And I guess, again, like I said, probably only other history geeks can connect and get that. But I want you to look at that wheel that I posted under the space. I think it should be under there. But, it shows like all of these things that occurred in the month of May. And, while they occurred at different times, nonetheless, they occurred, but the things all had kind of they affect one thing affected another thing, and the outcome, that ripple effect, I guess it's what I'm trying to speak to. And as I said, please forgive me. I know my brain is kind of mush today, and my stomach. But May 10th in 1865, Jefferson Davis was the Confederate president, got captured. And then in 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson, and that happened on May 18th. Plessy versus Ferguson was decided, and of course, not in his favor. And this is the man who wanted to, ride on in streetcars, and he was testing the bounds of the separate but equal that had occurred here in the South. But prior to that, the month before, the 13th Amendment, which gave slaves citizenships, and that was essentially considered the first Civil Rights Act of 1866. But they still were not willing to break that states' rights kind of Southern attitude that had come about even after these things were passed. They were still not determined to give blacks, um, you know, all of their rights. But then we swing forward in May of, but it took 8 years after, no, I'm sorry. My head is smushed. But also in May, the Sedition Act passed, and that was, basically declaring what these seditionists that they could not hold office. And then we swing around to 1954 and Brown versus Board. And during all of these things, like it's a white backlash that is the undercurrent and the pushback of all these things, because the UDC was them embracing the lost cause. And it at the core of all of it is this white supremacy, this white Christian nationalism, and the ideology is. I thought that we had erased some of that, maybe, or at least put it in its place where it was not relevant or as relevant. I mean, we know that it has always existed, but we had laws and things supposedly in place to put us on equal footing, even though we still had to fight for those things. But I guess what I'm saying is we are still going through it today again, over and over, and it's just so exhausting
Yeah,
sometimes.
and so now they're cloaking it in this Christian academies or alternative educational institutes that pull money away from public education, and then still deny Black students and other underrepresented communities the access to a fuller and greater education by with these vouchers. So it's still very much alive. This segregation lives on, but it's just taking on a different animus, and it has slowly fooled people, some at least, those not paying attention, into believing that we've made so much progress. And now, oh my God, what is this happening? Whereas this has been their plan and has remained their plan all along. They've just been much more clever about how they're shopping this around the country and being successful in many, many areas than they were before. That's the sad
Absolutely.
thing.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the paragraphs in this same article talks about how Brown envisioned a school system that offered educational excellence to Black children, assuming they were competent, capable, and deserving of America's best. But, here we are today. We have school systems that where we have we're at a place where people want to underfund the schools. They want to segregate the neighborhoods, congest the neighborhoods, pollute them, and turn them into food deserts. So it's taking away the underpinning nurturing also that is that was supposed to um, that was already kind of there. And the education was supposed to supplement it, but they're sucking away from the education and from the communities in so many other ways. It's just, we're just under an ongoing assault with that. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But I would love to hear from anyone else that would like to chime in on that, on your thoughts around that. But there are a few other things on the agenda today that I would like to cover, and I do have some articles. Whether or not we talk about them a lot is on you guys. But the DNI did publish a report, and I think gave a press conference about Russia and China now being the new threats that we are facing, and Iran. Dorsey endorsed RFK. And also, I ran across an interesting article with some RFK supporters in Arizona. And unfortunately, I also learned that he is going to be visiting Nashville soon. So he is really moving along, but I've seen a few things on the timeline with interviews with him and his VP pick, and it's just it's unbelievable that people really think that he is a viable and serious candidate. I'm pretty sure most of the people here in this space agree with that. I also think that it's a good thing that we will have some presidential debates, and they have been announced. And you can talk about that if you want to. June and September. I don't have the exact dates. Um,
One thing that I was reading, and I found it very interesting. They said, and I'm going to put this article up in the nest. And there has never been a third party candidate that has not received support from the wealthy big money donor billionaire class or the Republican Party. Not one time. And I think that's very significant because as you
because they know it helps.
exactly, exactly. So when we see the far left, just going completely over enthusiastic over the fact that they're going to definitely be voting third party and this is why and this is their candidate, no matter how much we try to explain to them that it's only helping Republicans. I mean, here's the proof. I don't know that it makes a difference to them. I know that the whole idea is to upset the apple cart of the duopoly here in America, but that's not what it is doing because these third parties are not establishing themselves on their own 2 feet. They are establishing themselves basically off the backs of Democrats and being funded by Republicans. And so when they pull from our voting electorate, our being the Democrat voting electorate, it is way more harmful. And especially going into this year's election, it's sickening to me.
It really is. And when I posted that, you posted a really good response, a reply. And I'll have to put that, just talking about the elections where this happened and how the Republicans came out the winners. I do think that RFK is a little bit of a mixed bag, though, because I really think that he can pull from them more than they think that he can.
Oh, I
He's just.
agree. And I hope that rings true in the end. I agree. I hope they don't figure it out.
I know. So it's just crazy because, again, the election is so important, and we just don't need these crazy spoilers in here, but of course, we always get them, and we seem to always get them at the most critical times in our country, and it's so disappointing. I also, of course, I know we've had a lot of talk about Alito and his flag issue. I definitely agree with Asha. I think he needs to be impeached, and that he knew exactly what he was doing, and he had no remorse. He did not. He just made excuses, but he did not apologize. I think that is a problem. I think that there has been enough investigative reports around him and Clarence Thomas to prove that they should, at the very least, recuse themselves from any of these cases involving those things. But really, they have just shown themselves to be so corrupt, with like hands in the cookie jar, and really coming out with cookie crumbs all over their face and not apologizing. Oh, you see some cookies? Okay, it's all right. Okay. I mean, really, they're just like that, blatant and in our face. And I really, really think it is time that they be dealt with, because this is one area we can yell and scream, and we need to. But this is how authoritarian governments come to power, when they are able to dismantle, to weaken the judiciary. And we have seen so much evidence of this at the highest court in the land, and in some of the lower ones as well. You know, um, Eileen Cannon down there, and I just saw, like, I'm kind of in, information overload a little bit, but the Fifth Circuit just tried to do something crazy, but the Supreme Court stopped them on that. But, this again is another glaring red alarming, signal to us that, we are so close, too terribly close to tipping into an authoritarian. And if most of the Republicans have their way, because their base is so full of evangelicals, it will be a theocracy. They talk about Barack Obama trying to bring Sharia law. They're bringing their own, and we're definitely going to get to Butka, because his misogynistic speech has so much more layers to it, and he is also a part of this white Christian nationalist push. Um, we had a ballot initiative in Missouri that was able to be sustained, so that's good. And I think that they're going to be putting reproductive rights on the ballot there, so very excited about that. I think it's ugly, sickening, disgusting that Governor Abbott pardoned that Perry guy. I'll be posting an article about that, so you can weigh in on that if you want to. And we can never forget this plan that's already in place, working and being shored up, Project 2025. And they have now some new inspiration to flush out to add some meat to the bones of their deportation plan. And this has been inspired by the UK, who recently got a plan together to ship migrants back to an African country. The name escapes me right now, but they plan to do this. So they're already kind of like working a shadow government, working out these deals with these countries. And one of them I know is an African country, and the other one may be where they want to pick up with the one that they did with Guatemala, to send certain Latin immigrants to Guatemala instead of coming to the United States. Then, of course, Xi and Putin had a big meeting. And then Macron decided to invite a Russian rep to their D-Day celebration. We can talk about that. Iran lost their president. But before they lost their president, I had them on my agenda because of some executions that they carried out. So it's a lot for us to talk about today. But I just want to put those things out there for us. And of course, we cannot and will not forget that they were trying to subpoena Garland, and they were having this, congressional meeting. Um, and there was some serious exchange that seemed to look like the British Parliament, going on there. So we can definitely talk about that too. But
It
I
definitely
think
reminded me of that.
that's exactly
Oh
what I
my
felt.
God.
I was like, what?
It was extremely a reminder of that.
But yes, it was awesome to see in real time. And then Billy Graham got a statue put up in the Statuary Hall. So I think that kind of covers the highlights of things that I wanted to make sure that. Oh, and Rudy Giuliani got served at his 80th birthday party. So I am going to open the
At his
floor.
own birthday party.
Just like, oh, yes. And I cannot forget Romney talking about all of those Republicans running to the trial, which is why they were having that late meeting in Congress. And then when Romney tried to opine on it, he just talking about if he were Biden, he would have pardoned the former guy. And I can't take him serious anymore either because, he said in the last election, he wrote in his wife. So how can you, not recognize the danger that we're in and be committed to democracy? It's not like you have to be, a Democrat. You just have to be for democracy. So anyway, we have a lot of people who have come up to speak. If you will raise your hands, when you're ready, I'm going to get to you. All right. So thank you for your patience. And we're going to go with Joseph and Jima Riri, 2K, then Jima Riri.
Hello, Miss D. Hello, Soul Sister.
Hi there.
Hi. Well, glad to be back. Another Monday of Advocacy Arena. And,
Oh, your space
oh
was
my
was
gosh, yes.
amazing, Joseph. I'm sorry, I have to just say that for everyone in the room. Amazing space.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, for coming to my space. It was really a lot of fun. Learned a lot from everybody that was speaking, and I went back and listened to it a couple times because there were bits that I missed initially, and then it's like I picked back up on it. So it was a lot of fun. So I will probably be holding another one again soon. Not sure when, but I think soon. Let's see. Soul Sister, I don't know if you saw maybe in the news, but here locally on Union News, there's a group of Disneyland employees, the ones
Oh
that
yes, I did see
are
that. I
yes,
gotta
the
post
the
that. Thank you.
costume the costumed employees voted to unionize, and I think that's a great victory. I do not regard Disney very highly, not for the same reason that say somebody like Pudding Fingers doesn't like them, but I've always viewed Disney as very, very greedy, and it's evident in the ways that they have driven up costs over the years. It's ridiculously expensive for somebody to go and spend a day at Disneyland, and with the way that it's treated its employees over the years, I've met people that have worked for Disney over the years. As a matter of fact, my ex worked for Disney in the early '90s, and they just don't treat their people right. And it's just greed, 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 and more greed. Even though, sometimes I say, when Disneyland, say for example, recently announced plans for expansion, yes, that is going to bring a lot of money to my congressional district because I'm in the same district as Disneyland. But they just don't treat their employees right. So I was very glad to hear about this. Um, let's see. I am traveling again tomorrow afternoon. I am going to Arizona very briefly. I have a quick work trip in Tucson, and I will be back first thing Friday morning. So that tells you how quickly I'll be there. But I'll keep an eye out if I see any signs around. I know over the weekend, Ruben Gallego was supposed to be meeting with former McCain donors as well as some cinema donors. So that is good that he is courting the center. That tells me that the center in Arizona, they are totally put off by Carrie Lake, and she has continued to insult McCain Republicans. So she's gonna find out the hard way again. She's not very bright. She has no political savvy at all. She doesn't know the first thing about governing. She's like Trump. She is a narcissist who wants power, and that's it. But she doesn't know how to govern at all. And I think people in Arizona are tiring of the extremism. So hopefully I will be able to gauge that. Ms. D, you mentioned something about Russia and China, and there was something that has came out over the last few days. Basically, how Russia and China are trying to stoke online divisions in the US, trying to stoke the chaos, trying to stoke sentiment against President Biden. And I'm going to call a thing a thing. These leftists right now are useful idiots for Russia and China. They are, you know. And I saw something just yesterday that Russia and China are also doing the same thing to exploit division in the UK.
They
So
they absolutely are, Joseph. They are doing it in the UK, in Canada, and in Australia. And I posted several weeks ago. I'll try to find it again, but it was a great article. Um, about disinformation. It's really like a real long paper. So you have to kind of look at it, but it involves a lot of specialists in this area from different places, many of them from the UK. And they were talking about what all of these countries can do, what they, the dangers, the threats that they all face. And the reason is because we're all democracies. And they talked about the number of countries. This is also why you see so many things happening on a global stage and why it is so important because I can't even remember, but I think it's something like 100 countries, that are considered democracies will be having elections this year. So they have a
yeah,
full playing field. And some of the larger democracies like the UK and Canada and Australia, they recognize this. They have pooled information and try to come up with plans and things. And they talked about in this article how we had failed in some of this, even though we have the information and we know what the threat is and we know the things that we can do. But because of our democracy and the extremists in it, um, our Congress has not been able to pass some of the laws that they have been able to pass in these other countries to prevent them from doing as much as they would like to do. And they talked about it being a great failing for our country, and that worries me. But it is what it is, and we just have to fight, knowing because we right now have an obstructionist house, and so they're not going to allow anything to be done that they think that could, hamper the outsiders that are helping them, because it works in their favor, and they're, some of them actually in Congress are spouting some of this stuff. So
Exactly. And when you have the former guy being cozy with both Russia and China, it is alarming. I talk about very much the troublesome duo of representatives in my area, Michelle Steele and Young Kim. They have both have documented ties to China, as much as they both try to act like they're friends of Taiwan and they're anti communist. No, they both have documented involvement with the CCP, in exchange for money. So yeah, that's one major threat. So when I see these leftists on this
Well,
app
because Code
act,
Pink is very heavily involved in providing them resources, and Code Pink is
yeah.
very heavily involved in China. So that's my concern. Is like I said, I don't begrudge people protesting. That this country was built on protest, but you need to have some understanding. And I get that some people felt like what former Secretary Hillary Clinton said about them understanding history, that it seemed a little patronizing. Um, but I mean, you have to consider what her job was. But again, at the end of the day, when you are going to be voting, and some of the behavior that you are involved in, the activities that you're involved in, you need to understand it. And I get that, yeah, they want it to have a heavy consequence, but I don't think that I think that they're more tied to their emotions than they are the actual information, the totality of the information, like the big picture. I feel like it's tunnel vision that they have, because it's around this horrific situation, which indeed is horrific because war is hell. But how you have to be strategic in some things, because we could end up in a much worse place where they might not even, I mean, just the very basic of not being able to protest. Because you know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? So I get
Ex-
it. I get
yeah.
it. And I don't want to bash them for protesting and being upset about it. But I do want to point out that the ways in which they're going about it, in some ways is counterproductive, and in fact it is enabling China and Russia to have their way, and the Republicans, because at this point they don't mind the Russians being for them. They don't, like they're okay with it. So
They are completely okay with it, and I think I might have to have another space, kind of like what I talked about before, about the dangers of authoritarianism, because I feel like we're seeing it on all sides. That the center is being surrounded by threats of authoritarianism on both sides. So I think that'll be a topic
yeah,
for
the
another
space
day.
between the horseshoe.
Uh huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And and what do you say about the assault on education? Again, I have to bring up the fact that it reminds me of regimes. I mean, most notably, Cambodia under the Khmer Rouge. That was a huge assault on educated people were literally murdered by the Khmer Rouge. And just when what we saw during the worst of the pandemic, just the Republicans' assault on science, it was mind boggling. So anyway, I will land my plane because I know others would like to speak. But thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. Hopefully, my trip to Arizona will not be just all work, even though it will be very quick. But hopefully, I can gauge something on the ground. But I will say Tucson is a reliably Democratic area for the most part. So we'll need to run up the score in Pima County where it's at. We'll need to run that up in November. I'll probably later on I'll be posting on my timeline. There's a wonderful picture I saw on the timeline the other day of a map of Arizona broken down by counties. So I'll probably highlight the counties that we need to really focus on in Arizona for victory in November. So thank you both, Ms. D and Soul Sister, and I'll sit back and listen to everyone
All
else.
right. Well, chime back in later if you feel up to it. But yes, very good points and information. So I do hope that you have a chance to, get some political intel when you're there. But I also hope that you have a chance to just kind of relax a little bit too. So try to, balance it all out, get a little bit of it all. But thank you for coming and joining us today in our conversation. And so up next, I think it's at 2K and then G Marie.
Hello, everyone. Miss D, thank you. And first, I want to be another voice in the chorus, shouting out Joseph's space the other night. It was absolutely was on point and eloquent and really a balm for the soul because it came right on time. And Soul Sister, I'm not leaving you out, my friend, and I want to respond to you directly. Oh my goodness, I heard the pain in your voice when you were talking about the vote, and I've got to tell you, I just, I don't know, if people remember if it's absolutely clear, but I recently relocated from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, to Philadelphia. There's a lot of stuff behind that, but what I'm going to say though is when you gave the numbers, please, I know it takes time, but please take heart because frankly, I mean, I know that space, and frankly, I'm surprised that it was that close. So y'all did good. People did good. It was good. Remember, everyone, this is the area, I know we're talking about statewide now, but this is the area that elected Tommy Tuberville over Doug Jones. Come on, y'all. I mean, come on. That's what we're working with in Alabama. And in fact, and I looked at Tommy Tuberville,
Tuberville don't even live there.
and yeah, and it was something, what was it? Something 60 something to 30, 39 something. Doug Jones. So, you know what? Soul Sister, please, please, take heart because that was close. It was really, really close.
It
So,
was, it was, and I think that's the heartbreaking part of it.
yeah.
It's the good news, but it's the heartbreaking part of it.
Yes, yeah, oh, yes. Oh, I know, I know, and but you're in a place where our hearts are with you, and let's just count on time. And in the meantime, we are fighting and going to win in other areas across the board. So I wanted to start with that. I wanted to also comment and I loved. Miss D, as you were talking about education and what's happening, make no mistake. I mean, I always repeat myself, but there is an energy that propels a certain mindset. It's the same energy that thought it could come to a country that it, quote, discovered where people were living and decimate that population.
Yes, because of the doctrine of discovery. Yeah,
Right. Yes.
and there's your white supremacy right there. White Christian supremacy.
People were right, and then so decimated the indigenous population, and then had the nerve, and also had the nerve to kidnap human beings and make them work for them. And always there's a agree there is just a certain energy and mentality, and it is relentless, pervasive, and it's like, what do you call it, like water on a rock. They it's not giving up.
It just will wear you down. And that's what they have done. They have been so persistent and relentless, and they take their lumps, but they do not go away. And they are in the last throes now because they know that the time has approached where they will no longer be the physical majority. So
And
they have to instill laws that will allow them as a minority to rule and still work on this principle.
Absolutely. And they sow and encourage division. And I'm not going to unpack that right now, but I wanted to add more observations about education. Remember, another element of this, and some people debate it, and I know things are complex, but another element with education, you were talking about Brown, that we know and are aware of the mechanism of white flight, creating the suburbs, maintaining segregation, school in like K through 12, maintaining segregation that way, and depriving. I'm making depriving urban areas of the tax base that would allow even separate but equal education. Running down the schools from taking flight. So that, again, it's that determination to not, to always have their way. And that is an energy that I wish, people who are, say things like, who demand perfection, rather, and perfection is so varied, before they will vote for democracy and freedom, is just beyond me, because that is the energy, that relentless pervasive energy is what we're working with. One, and I just wanted to add, uplift on the table, um, the note about, I guess we got two Dr. Bidens now, y'all. Dr. Biden, Joe Biden getting the honorary PhD, and the speech that he made at Morehouse, when there were so many people, the doom
Yes.
and gloom, and how Morehouse was going to act out, and Morehouse this and Morehouse that, and they were going to protest. They did not, and it was glorious. And no, and media isn't covering. There are snippets and things that Joe Biden said that are deep, rich, and meaningful, and uplifting Black men. Hello. So the other thing is,
Yes, I have that speech. So I will read some snippets, but you're right. You're right.
yes, and another thing that I love. So we got Dr. Biden, and now he's a Morehouse man. Our president is a Morehouse man. I'm all about that. I'm
Me
all
too.
about that. So that I wanted to also put that in our conversation. And with that, I'm not going to land my plane. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get a helicopter, and I'm just going to hover for the rest of the
Oh,
conversation.
good. I
So,
love it. I love it. So I'm so glad that you brought it up, and it'll give me a chance to pull up the speech because Joyce Vance wrote about it, and I thought she did a very good job in her Substack. So I am going to find that, and I have a few clips from it. So. Next, we'll go to Jim Riri, and then we'll check in with Carl and Near.
Good afternoon, Misty and Soul Sister. Thank you for the space, and I hope you both feel better and take good care of yourselves. 2K, everything you said, so powerful. I almost forgot what I wanted to talk about, so thank you for that. Misty, as you were speaking, a while back, I had taken some time because it's really important. I'm 55 and I still have to educate myself on real American history because the things that I were taught were not necessarily true. And Ruby Bridges, the little girl who had to go into the school in Louisiana, I can't even imagine what that was like. Was she 6, 7? She was very young. But I can't imagine what it's like to have all these people, to be surrounded by all these white people who are angry and police officers, and she is an activist who has helped along with education and how important it is. But again, imagine just for a moment stepping into her shoes at that age and how difficult that was, but how much she taught the world and taught us here. The other thing I wanted to talk about locally, I just wanted to put out some information that I think is important. There was a shooting by the Carroll Stream police, a police officer who shot His name was Isaac Goodloe. He was a young black man and he was shot. There are, of course, investigations into this, and I know the family has a very good attorney. And back in March and April, we're demanding to see all the video cams, the videos of what happened because this man should not have been shot. But one of the things I wanted to say, if you know anyone who has had issues with this police department, I think it's important that they speak with their lawyers. And there are certain things going on in that department that are not okay. My nephew, who is white, mind you, the Carroll Stream police illegally arrested him for a so-called DUI. A community, there is a block of many apartments, like a kind of subdivision of many apartment buildings, and they have these community service officers that drive around. Well, come to find out, these so-called community service officers are calling these Carroll Stream department and people have been arrested. Problem is the community service person is not a police officer. These officers did not witness these so-called crimes or these so-called DUIs and other things they've been charged with. And this community service officer, my nephew literally got home. He works in the city at a Five Guys as a manager. So he drives, it's a long drive for him. He has to parallel park, and he was literally out of his car by his building when the officer drove up and said, "I think you might have bumped that car." And my nephew said, "No, I didn't bump any car." And they told him to stay there. And then this community service officer called the Carroll Stream Police Department. Long story short, when it went to court, literally the judge threw it out and also said this young man should have never spent 3 days in jail. Mind you, it was a Friday, so he had to spend 3 days in DuPage County Jail because of this arrest that should have never happened. And what happened is the very next evening after the judge threw it out, the police chief called my nephew and gave him an offer of $60,000 and made a statement that there are three others that they're dealing with right now where things have not gone well for the department, I guess. So that's the reason why I wanted to share this, is because I know that there are people who have been falsely arrested or convicted. If a police chief is calling my nephew that night after the judge threw it out, I know that there's bad doings, and I feel like that entire department needs to be looked at. But I did want to put this out here because I think it's important. And if you know anyone, again, please let them know. Because if that happened to my nephew, I know that it's happened to lots of others. And there is a large Black community that lives in that subdivision of apartments where my nephew lived. So I wanted to share that also today, just so people know, and that's local here in my state.
And that is where?
Carroll Stream. It's in DuPage County, Illinois.
Okay.
Um, and the other thing I wanted to just throw out there lastly is Steve Bannon made it very clear back in 2015, 2016 about this movement of the white nationalist movement. And he's wanting to spread it to Europe and all around. So some of us have been aware of that. Unfortunately, the majority of my white skin kin is not, or they're just so angry that they're voting to spite themselves. And I just can't imagine that you want to bring your children up to teach them how to hate other people or to hate other religions or other beliefs. And that's literally what my skinkin is doing right now. First of all, we took off from England because we didn't like the king and everything like that. Then you came and you stole land, you slaughtered, you enslaved people, and now you want to make America, which was supposed to be land of the free, an authoritarian run country. I mean, it's just quite sickening. And you're literally,
Oh, yeah. And that was something that I talked about last week, was how, Jamestown, which is the first settlement here in these colonized United States, occurred in May as well. Like I said, my head was blown by all of the significant events throughout history, centuries. And that was what 1607 or something around there. But yeah, I just am agreeing with you. This has
Yeah,
been a problem since the founding.
and I truly, truly hope that my white majority is tired of all this nonsense and is tired of sticking their head in the sand, because you can't just sit this one out because you think it doesn't affect you. It affects you, it affects your children, your family, your neighbors, and the people you love. And lastly, um, I still cannot get unstuck from the story of the worm in RFK's head that needed to be removed. And who on earth would want to vote for somebody like that? But thank you.
Well,
I'm
he has his fan club, and I'm just I'm wondering if the worm, was not, like multiplied or something. It still needs to be removed from some people's head
There's still
because
some baby worms floating there.
I'm telling you, I read this article. I think I shared it on my timeline. I'll find it to put in the nest. But he was in Sedona, and he was with some of his voters, and these people. I am recalling in the article, they're like, one person is like 80, another one is like 61, another one is maybe 60 or so. Older people, all white, and they're having tapas and whatever else, and just a lot of magical thinking you know going on, like voting your conscience, like our democracy is not in danger. And I'm like, sure, you can vote your conscience. You can use your privilege to. Sorry if I got cut off. I got an incoming call, but we can't afford to do that. And it just.
Oh, we lost you again, Miss D.
Did we lose audio?
I think she's maybe answered the other call that she got.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Just want to make sure.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I had a call.
Well,
So,
thank you.
G. Marie, were you finished, my dear? I'm sorry. It broke my concentration.
No, I was finished, and thank you for sharing, Miss D. I totally appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you coming and joining us as well. And I think that Illinois has had problems with policing for, some time, and problems with their prisons and all sorts of things. So I appreciate you bringing that story to light, and also the other things that you shared. And again, like I said, that's where my head was, is that this is a problem that has been going on in this country forever. But our even with that, our forefathers came over enslaved. They got free of that, and even after the uh, freedom from being enslaved, we still had to fight to get the right to vote for women. We have always been fighting for our democracy. The unfortunate thing is that at this particular time, we have never been at a place where those things that we fought for and rightfully won were taken away. And that's what's happening now. And it started with Roe. And I did find that speech, and I'm sorry, it was from, I know it was from one of the ones that I read. It was actually Heather Cox Richardson, who is a great historian that I like to read, that wrote about President Biden's speech. And I just want to give a couple of highlights from it that she included in her Substack article. And of course, the history of the school, which was founded in 1867. So look at that, a couple of years after Jefferson Davis was captured by civil rights leaders. And it was to educate the formerly enslaved men, because they believed education would be the great equalizer from slavery to freedom. And the quote that I have today, and that kind of inspired the space, comes from George Washington Carver, who was a Tuskegee professor, Tuskegee Institute professor, and agricultural scientist. I think when we were growing up, we used to think of him as the peanut farmer before Jimmy Carter was the peanut farmer, because he did some work, particularly around peanuts and sweet potatoes, and he was an agricultural scientist. But in any case, she talked about how in Biden's speech that, he touched on his faith. He told them the story of, basically his origin story, how, he decided to get into politics, and, the story of, how he started locally as a council person, and how he was inspired to do that after Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. And in the city where he was living, Wilmington, Delaware, it was segregated. And, that fires and fights and stuff were erupting all over the place, and that for 9 months, the National Guard patrolled the city in combat gear. And he said that's the longest stretch in any American city since the Civil War. And he talked about Dr. King's legacy. Here's what he said: Dr. King's legacy had a profound impact on me and my generation, whether you're black or white, Biden explained. He left the law firm to become the first public defender and then a county councilman, working to change our state's politics to embrace the cause of civil rights. So I'm just going to stick a pin in it there. So I think it is only right that he is an honorary doctor and a Morehouse man at that. So with that, I'm going to go to Nair and then Carl.
Hello, everybody. So I actually listened to you guys in the beginning from 8 o'clock, but I have to be a little careful because I'm in a country that, to be me, I have to be very careful because they're arresting people like me. They have a voice. So I actually listened at 8 o'clock, but I wanted to make sure that it's safe. So I decided to come back. But I do want to remind you one thing, and I'm not going to stop till November 5th to remind you what democracy is all about. Because without a democracy, our voice doesn't mean anything. Our human rights gonna be gone, and it's exactly what's happening here. And I'm telling you right now, we have 200, a little over 200 thousand American citizens living in Israel right now, and we got really bad news. 1/3 of the Israeli people support our horrible, fascist, horrible right-wing religious government that are not good for the people of Israel, they're not good for the people of Palestine, and they're not good for the world, and including United States of America. And I just want you guys to know that I'm really sad. I'm sad from a couple reasons because I go to spaces of people that I think that are Democrats, and all what I hear is when I went yesterday, and I'm not going to say the name of the host, but in front of everybody, 300 people or 300 and something people, he said that he cannot stand President Biden. Well, if you cannot stand President Biden, then you're not a Democrat, number one, because being a Democrat, it's very simple. We have one leader, and his name is Joe Biden. We should be all standing by him, with his amazing vice president. And I don't want to hear any bullshit from people telling me he did this wrong, he did this wrong. He did not do nothing wrong. Nobody is perfect. Yes, I never say Biden is perfect, but let me tell you, if anybody in America is a Democrat or call himself Democrat, think that somebody else will do a better job, they're going to have a big, big disappointment because the price that they will pay if Biden is not going to win with our vice president, it's going to be much worse. And I will suggest you guys, I know I had to raise my voice yesterday about it because I just cannot take, I don't want to call bad name, but I'm done with idiots. I'm done with stupid people that are going to destroy our democracy just because they want to be right, because they want to be trendy, and they want to be cool. I don't want to be cool. I want to keep a democracy in United States of America. It's not about being cool. It's not about being, yes, I am right. And you know what? I'm telling you what, I'm scared. I'm scared because we have 5 months. And these 5 months, I hear more and more voices. And when I hear Soul Sister talking about the union, just like, it kills me. It kills me because we are an amazing people and we let some of those people talk and I'm sorry, I just cannot be quiet anymore. I will not allow people bash or talk bad about my president, my voice, Joe Biden, because he's the right choice for United States and for the world. And if people didn't get it by now, then we are in a trouble. But we need to stick and stand by him, because if not, we're going to look just like what's happening in Israel. And you know what's happening in Israel today. And Joseph, I'm sure, heard that right now in Hague, they want to Benjamin Netanyahu cannot, on the court, in the court over there, is in trouble. What's happened with Palestine in Israel is not the issue. Biden is not a babysitter. Is the president of the United States, not of the world, and not especially not for the Middle East. He did more than enough to create two-state solution, take care of the Israeli and the Palestinian people. And if people don't see it, then I'm going to wake them up, because this is my job. Because Biden did an amazing job in the Middle East. Now, I tell you right now, democracy, democracy, democracy. I just don't think people really get it, just like I don't see people get it in Israel right now. They don't know what's going to happen. We're going to look like Iran in a couple of years. We're going to have women cover the face. We're going to all go to temple, and we're going to have all those religious people tell us to study Bible, and this is what we're going to look like. And this was going to happen in the United States of America with Christian and those people that think, you know what? I'm sorry. We are going to be strong. We need to stick together. We need to support each other. But please remember what at stake, and Dee and Soul Sister and everybody here, you keep saying it every time. What at stake is our life. Our freedom come after democracy. Our human rights is all after democracy. When we lose a democracy, guess what? We are not important anymore. Not the union, not if you are black, white, or yellow, or green. It doesn't matter if you are gay or not, if you want an abortion or not, if you are Muslim or Jewish or Christian, your voice is not going to matter anymore. So please keep strong. And I know it's not everybody personality, but sometimes it's okay not to be nice. Sometimes we need to stand for what's right and for what's true, even if it's uncomfortable. When I heard a host speaking bad about my president that I'm so proud of, and 300 people are listening, or 400 people listening to him, and nobody say anything, I'm going crazy. This is exactly why we're going to lose an election, because we are cannot, well, let's put it this way, we cannot be silent. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Nair, and your passion and the fact that you do understand what's at stake. And it is very disheartening to know that there are people who are saying this at this point, and having spaces and huge groups of people, for an audience. And this is why we continue to come and do what we do every week, because it's important. We can't always stop the uninformed, the purposely, misinforming individuals for whatever reason, their own gain, for money, for influence, because all of these things are going on. Some of them are willing tools, and they're playing with fire. And I know how angering it can be to actually hear it. Sometimes it breaks my heart, but it also just encourages me to continue doing what I do. And I don't take any of our voices, our activities as civically engaged and informed citizens lightly, because I believe that the people who are part of this community, this is who they are. It's not just when they're in this space that wherever they go, they understand what's at stake. They know the time frame that we're dealing with. So I feel like they're going to be cognizant of that. And sometimes you can't always speak to everyone or convert everyone, but it's good just to kind of be aware and peel off those people who may not be aware and help to inform them. But I get what you're saying, and I just see them as another tool. Go ahead, Near, but I know that they're out here and it's being stoked. Like,
No, no, I absolutely agree with you, D. 100%. I do want to say one thing. I quit smoking 2 weeks ago. The best thing that I did that I quit smoking cigarette, I lost patience for people that have no common sense. So yes, it's very hard to quit smoking after 45 years, but it's really good because it's a
I'm gonna
perfect
drop and
time
come
to
back
quit.
because I can't hear. I'm not sure why. I'm sorry if I'm interrupting near.
Oh, it's okay. So, I love Soul Sister. But I do want to say that I did quit smoking because I found out some health challenges that I have to deal with. But the good news about it, that challenges bring us opportunity to win and do things different. And I just find out I never thought I will ever be able to quit smoking after 45 years, and here I am 2 weeks later without a cigarette, and I'm okay. I'm still alive. And I will tell you one thing: I have no intention and no patience if people just said what they said, but lying about things and spreading fake news, I have a problem that I cannot be silent. And it's all what I'm asking for myself, not from anybody. I cannot tell anybody what to do. For me, what works for me is when I hear lies, it's to stand and say, wait a second, this is not the truth. This is not the fact. So let's talk the fact, because the fact are that what's happening in Texas, what's happening in a lot of states like Florida, this is not how I want my family, my friends to live. So I agree with you, D. We're all going to do it different. But I will tell you, I will not be silent for the next 5 months. I don't care what I have to do, but I will not let anybody talk bad about somebody that did so much for our country in the last 3.5 years. And people are just because Russia, because money, because Iran, because China, I don't care because what. I will not let anybody put him down because he's the best president. And I'm telling you right now, I am in love with the person that he is, with the leadership that he is, and I'm in love with our vice president. Every day I just listen to her and I fall in love with how powerful this woman is, and we need to let people hear her talk and how much she does for the American people, for every American people, not just like the other side that they choose who deserve to get something and who doesn't. We have a president and a vice president for every single American person. Thank you.
you're so right, Nair. We absolutely do. And I loved, since we were here last week, of course, they all went to different places to acknowledge and commemorate the Brown versus Board decision, but we also had Armed Services Day, Armed Forces Day, and they were all in different places to celebrate and appreciate the members of our joint services. And this man has dealt with so much just in his time, these 3.5 years, because he came in the middle of a pandemic and the world is on fire. And the United States is very much involved in diplomatic negotiations in so many places around the globe. and our economy, while we may not all individually feel it when we're buying groceries and those kinds of things, but from an overall standpoint, our economy is still very strong. And just know that this culture war that is being stoked, because that's what I view these spaces and conversations as. This is the culmination of years of work of the right wing to create these divisions, and of Putin and Xi to know our soft spots and to dig in. But go ahead, 2K.
But not just that, Misty. Right before 2K, I'm sorry to cut in, but it's also that they're making it seem like the support that they stand by, or the issues that they stand behind, have a much larger support than what they actually do in the political landscape of things. So and that's to invoke the feelings of people who are actively engaged in social media, and to create this type of panic, or to dishearten us and make us feel like this is a lost cause that we're standing behind and fighting for. It's to create this apathy within us as well. We have to remember that this is, part of the psyop is not just to turn people into naysayers and create division. It is also to create panic and hysteria within those of us who are standing firm and solid in our belief in of fighting for democracy and standing behind Biden Harris as well. So we have to remember that it is a many pronged monster that is working the systems that are currently in place. And we just have to be aware of it, because I think that there are many more people who care about democracy and care about the direction of this country than there are that are saying it's going to be tumbleweeds, and we're not going to turn out, and we're not going to show up. I believe that idea, or their idea, is to discourage us and to stop us from fighting, because though they know that if we continue fighting, we're going to pull those people off the couches, we're going to pull them off the fence, and we're going to get them in the ballot box, and we're going to get the and secure those votes for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And I want us all to remember, because, and I'm saying that for myself as well, because believe me, I have just really been discouraged by some of the things that I see on the timeline. And I have to remind myself that this is part of it, Gwen. This is part of it. This is part of the process of what they're trying to do in order to discourage us. Don't fall for it. You got to just stay firm, stay in the fight, and just keep going. Never give up. Never give up, and never give in to this type of mentality, because that is what they want, and that is when they win.
Amen. And exactly that, those are pretty much, I co-sign all of that, because we know that this is what they do. This is how they do it. And we have to keep doing what we do. So I love, Nair, that you talk about fighting, no matter what. And it calls on all of us to do that wherever we can, however we can. But I am frustrated by these people, but I am also optimistic by people like you and the people in this community. And I keep in mind that they are a minority, but they're loud and often violent, and they have a huge network of media sources, including this app, and allies. So they were brought here, encouraged to do that, but we. This is the time for us to put our nose to the grindstone and do the work. And as you said, calling it out, that's part of doing the work. Being aware, being informed. That's why Soul Sister and I come in here, even when we're not feeling so great, to do our part in this little bit to stay informed, to uplift one another, and to be encouraged. Go ahead, 2K.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak again. And I want to build off of what Neer said. And Neer, you're just see, that's just it. People in this space just hearing your voices is so encouraging and uplifting to me. And I wanted to add some other things too. I think that blippity blip media, they are in for the shock of their lives because they focus and have tunnel vision on certain things, and all day long you hear the same story. They focus on the same story. I want to know. I didn't see coverage. Maybe it was there. Maybe I don't know where to look. But I didn't see big ups for Vice President Harris's celebration of Asian American, Native, Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I think that's a big deal. I mean, our administration is doing things across the board that look like us, US of A. They are doing things, they are really opening the country up to just the fullness of all we can be. And one of the things that, and I know in um, Joseph's space, we talked about this. One of the things that encourages me, you can laugh if you want to, but I took the inauguration to heart, and because it was digital, there are things that I can reclaim easily and see. And there's that one segment where it's Demi Lovato. Can't remember. She's singing a Bill Withers song, and what they did, I thought it was so clever. They have videos of, I think it was essential workers all across the country as that. And so every now and then I play that, it uplifts me. I try to tune into the positive things that aren't being covered. And Vice President Harris is all over this country. I mean, my God, I mean, the energy that she displays, and that's an underreported story. So that's why I say that negative Nelly media, they are in for the shock of their lives, because there are things I believe that operate in the boots on the ground, if you will, um, sphere, that are making a difference. And that's something that I'm going to choose to focus on to um, continue to uplift me. Oh, and the other thing I want to say, two more things. First of all, we have seen, with the former guy, his little surrogates don't, the media's not focusing on that enough. His surrogates fail all over, all up and through the in congressional race. They're not popular, and whether it's about Rovember or other things, I mean, people are seeing that garbage. So my feeling is, if they can't prevail, how can he? That's number one. Number two, keep talking. That's right. Keep talking, because the more you see of him, there are some little blips on the timelines today about how he's just so out of it, and he won't be denied. He has to have an audience. So, he's going, and they were talking about him glitching this weekend and what have you. The more he talks, the better off we are, because there will be things revealed, I believe, that will demonstrate just how nuts and unfit he is over time too. So I think there are a lot of things working in our favor, and I'm going to focus on those. And so thank you for letting me speak again.
I absolutely agree with you. Yeah, his teleprompter quit working. And again, there's so much projection because I think, were accusing President Biden at one time of not being able to speak unless he had a teleprompter. But, we know that this is the kind of stuff that they do. And then Saturday Night Live I fell asleep on part of it, but their whole opening thing was him and Hannibal Lecter. I mean, like, the man is crazy. Yes, he's nuts. And the more he speaks, the more he shows us who he is. And I do believe in our power, our commitment, because just like we have this space every week. I have a few other Zoom meetings during the week that are regular, where there are other communities of people focused around, different things, but they are working groups that understand what's at stake, and are doing the work. My Blue Tennessee meeting is one of those, and um, what we're aiming to do to be able to encourage more um, Democratic candidates and to be able to support them. Then I have another community of a investigative reporter who brings great authors and things to um, the conversation, like Ruth Ben Gott, Ann Nelson, David Pepper, and those people. And it's not just me, and it's a lot of people who understand what's at stake, who are making sure that they continue to stay informed. So that is, again, like I said, it is the aim of our space, but it is so important. And I heard a quote about that someone else was quoting President Lincoln, I think maybe, and saying basically that the best citizen, and I'm paraphrasing this, was basically the best, well informed. I'll have to find that because, again, my brain is mush today. But again, it just is always so important because it's important that we even know that these kind of spaces are going on there. We need to know what these crazy people are doing because in order to fight a foe or an enemy, you need to understand how they think and how they operate. So that's why we pay attention to what they're saying and doing. Speaking of which, one of the surrogates, who I guess is vying for VP, is JD Vance, the Biden headquarters Twitter account, posted a clip of him, which is not surprising at all, but basically praising Orban's virtues, and it was in particularly around education and he was doing this on Face the Nation. And I appreciate that Margaret did bring him the facts. Like she was like, so you sure you want to support him or encourage people, our country, to go in that direction? And she rattled off the things that he had done, basically seizing the institutions. And Joseph spoke to this before too, because that's what authoritarians do. And I can't remember who it was, if it was Jima Riri or who talked about Bannon in the early days after he was kicked out of the former guy's administration, went over on a recruiting tour in Europe. And there's still some of them that are doing that. What's his name? That Christopher Rufo. He was over in Orban's country at a university there, giving like a speech or a TED talk. And when he Orban has been to CPAC many times. They've held CPAC over there at least once. I think they are planning another. But he is basically instructing them. Here's how you do it. So again, we go back to the judiciary and the media capturing them. And so we just because they have worked on these processes, and Putin, of course, he's a former KGB officer, so he knows how to institute these um, to put these disinformation campaigns into play, and the psychology of a country, a society, how he can um, basically implant wormholes to just keep working at the divisions and nibbling around the edges, which they have been doing. And now they have gotten so good at it, they don't have to be as direct and active as they were in 2016, because now some of the people that they got through to, they're doing the job for them without any help from them. But let me pause and go to Joseph.
Thanks, Misty. I kind of wanted to build on something that 2K said, because it actually reminded me of something that Geechee said in my space on Saturday, is that elections are won on the ground. And as we know, this app is not necessarily real life. This app is not necessarily a gauge of what is going on away from this app, because we know there are a lot of bad actors on this app. Case in point, just a few minutes ago, I happened to see something in my feed where it almost sounded like this person is like giving up, just like saying, oh, we have to prepare for a second Trump presidency. And I'm feeling like this person is doing this for engagement. Like, how about mobilizing people so that a second Trump presidency doesn't happen? How about that? Instead of doom posting for engagement, how about uplifting people, and how about highlighting uh, what this administration has accomplished. So, you know, it boggles my mind what some people on this app will do for engagement. But again,
Totally agree.
yeah, it's this app is not real life. And uh a perfect example of what 2K said and also what Geechee said on Saturday. In my area, nearby, the next door congressional district for me, California's 40th district, Joe Kerr, who is the Democratic candidate to take on Young Kim, he got through the primary with like little to no social media game. And I was very surprised when I saw that he made it through because Allison Muniz de Micolas, who I was supporting in the primary, uh, she had a pretty good social media game, so I could see what was going on, and what she was saying that what she could do better. Now, personally, I wish Joe Kerr would have more of a social media game just to counteract all of Young Kim's lies. But if he's getting it done on the ground, then then I get it, because that's where kind of again to what Geechee said on Saturday, you're not going to win an election with social media posts. And I happened to see something on Instagram the other day that he was going to be meeting with one of the local Democratic clubs in one of the cities in the 40th district. So I know he is on the ground. Again, I would just like to know a little bit more about what he's doing. But if he is got his supporters and all that on the ground and they're doing the game, then it doesn't matter how many lies Young Kim posts on this app all day, because he's getting the job done with meeting the voters. So I am keeping my fingers crossed on that. So that's just all I wanted to add there.
And that's a great point and example that you brought up. So I think it is important. I think that we're human. I think that we all are affected sometimes by things that are happening in our personal lives or our community. And certainly near, we can understand, a lot going on every day there where you live. And it is hard sometimes to be positive. But and this is not magical thinking, but this is also kind of, I think, optimistic but realistic optimism, because we are actually doing the work, and we know that just numbers wise that they represent a very small minority. But it is how we respond to that minority, and it's basically the same in your country. They are a minority, but and that's what the whole game is here, folks. It is this minority that is seeking to maneuver the pieces on the democracy chessboard and the levers of power so that they will be able to rule as a minority, and to basically control us ultimately, because they're not interested in ruling over or governing over a democracy. It is an autocracy that they choose. So
And here's one thing that really irks me. I mean, like, if there's one thing that really bothers me about these people who are claiming to be standing against the apartheid, what they call the apartheid governorship of Gaza, is that in the midst of them not voting for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and claiming to stand against apartheid, they are in fact sowing the seeds and encouraging the growth of apartheid right here in their own country. And I don't know why that is not as urgent, more urgent for them. But I just want to thank Joseph Neer and 2K for talking about boots on the ground, because I had written it down and then you guys were talking about it, and it did harken back to what Geechee said in your space, Joseph. So thank you guys for taking those words. The power of the mind is amazing, and I'm glad that we were all in like-minded sync there for that moment. And that's what we have to remember,
Yeah.
that that we are all encouraged to continue this fight. And this idea that not voting for Joe Biden is going to garner them some kind of results that they think that they want, or they think is going to be beneficial for them, is really false, and it's really foolish on their behalf. And it's to the point where that there's no, you can say something, you might be able to change your mind, but you're really, that's probably not it. You're probably not going to make a blink in their on their radar at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a cult mentality at this point. I know that I mentioned one of the things that this Project 2025, that they are fleshing out more their deportation plan, but they're also working, and there's some reporting around it. And I'll find these articles and post them on my timeline a little bit later. But to disband um, NOAA, the scientific, climate, part of the agency, and in that culture war vein, North Carolina has passed a law banning N95 mask in public. I mean, this is what we're looking at, folks. It's crazy. I mean, and it makes you want to laugh. But look, I'm one of these people who I have never stopped wearing my mask because I use rideshare, and when I get in them, I put my mask on. Now they're not always N95s, but doesn't matter. And I'm like, how can you live or be willing to gamble your freedoms in a state, in a country that won't allow you to have the health measures that you feel that you need? I mean, to me, it's like banning oxygen tanks. You know what I'm saying? So it's crazy. Go ahead, 2K.
Yeah, I didn't want to just burst in, but you know what? Seriously, how MF and dare you? When I saw that, and that's the kind of thing that can spread, banning mask wearing, all of this political claptrap associated with mask wearing. There have been people who've been wearing masks for years because they have autoimmune deficiency disorders, etc. They've got, and they're, seriously, you know what? Here's another thing too. Let's see, yeah, let it happen, and let's see how industry and travel, etc., shuts down in a state. You're a state that won't allow mask wearing? Come on, I'm not going there. And think about, just wait until some of these things, that all of the tentacles unravel, or
Right. It's
however
just
you put it, with people. They're not going to send their children to college in places like this. There's not going to be adequate commerce, what have you. They are not thinking. And then I want to go back to this idea too, with people. I'm not voting for Biden. Huh. Biden's going to be fine. Biden will be just fine. Even, and you know what? I'm not even going to countenance. I'm not going to even. I don't entertain the thought of the former guy. It's just not going to happen. But what I want to say too to some people, when they just write it off that quickly, right away, and this is me as a Black woman, if a Black woman is saying this, and you all might know who I mean, right away, I think, oh, so you're also saying that you don't support Kamala Harris. When you say you're not voting for Joe Biden, what you are telling me is, I mean, it's the entire system and setup, what have you. So you are also dismissing that brilliant, capable woman. Okay, is that how you want to play it? Because I love, remember with Joe's Morehouse speech, what did he say? Someday a Morehouse man can be president after we have an AKA from Howard. right? Am I right? So don't, seriously, don't play with me. And now I'm getting all riled up. So let me shut up. Thanks.
No, you're fine, but I just feel like it's important to point out these things that really truly are kind of cultural war issues that have been magnified, that are, potentially harmful to us. I mean, it's one thing if you don't want to wear a mask, but to actually ban them is very, very dangerous. And to want to destroy agencies that, work on scientific issues. Of course, they did a number with the CDC. It still hasn't gotten right, I don't think. But NOAA, and you guys remember the marker incident with the map, the hurricane map, right? So that's what we're going to be getting again. I mean, yeah, just count me out on that.
And I'm going to interrupt and say, don't you remember that the windmills cause cancer?
Yeah, it's one thing to not.
Yeah,
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 that's
And
just.
inject bleach.
Yeah,
right.
it's
Yeah.
it's too much. We cannot afford
Well, I,
to
I think
go
I
back
actually
there.
think the mask thing is racism because Asian cultures wear them all the time, and I think that's what it is.
It could be. I'm sure. Like I said, it's a mix of both. It's just designed. It's more pulling on that thread of the culture war, But I think that in many cases, some of these places, what they work so hard to get, it's that dog caught the car kind of thing. They wanted couldn't wait to overturn Roe, but it has really galvanized half the population of this country in unexpected places, in unexpected ways. And I think that's what we're going to see in November as well, which is kind of funny that Ron Johnson was in, I think it was Wisconsin, and he was begging his evangelical base to unify around abortion. And I say, yay, do that, because we are now living in an era where there are women, two of which in my state, one just announced just in the past week, are running because of adverse effects that our no exception ban has had on them personally. And I know they are not the first. They both are also involved in lawsuits with the states, and the ripple effects goes into the drain on our medical profession. And even when they go to other states, I can't even remember the show that I was watching, but this person had interviewed OBGYN doctors and stuff who were performing abortions in states that were still allowing them, and they are really in overload. I won't say they're like where doctors were during the pandemic, but they're like working to midnight. They're carrying the trauma and the stories of the patients that they care for, and keep in mind, doctors are human beings too, and humans can only, you know, takes so much. And doctors have to go to school for a long time. They're really smart. They can do some other things too if they choose to. So I feel like they are causing a drain on the medical profession at large, just as they have done with the uh, teaching profession, and that is continuing. And I know, 2K, since you're in Philadelphia, I think I was reading some stories about their horrific teacher shortage there, but I know it's a problem around the country for multiple reasons. But part of it is these assaults that they had because of these culture wars that were being stoked back during the pandemic, and have just been relentless. But go ahead.
Yes, and my heart goes out to, I mean, the idea of teachers didn't, you don't become a teacher, you don't go do K through 12 to carry a gun. That's not that job. That is not that job. So apart, in addition to what's going on here, my heart goes out to you and other places where it's just that the ignorance is what I can't get over. The ignorance and the, what do you call it, like knee jerk responses to things. But I also wanted to point out too. You had mentioned, we haven't talked about, I can't remember his name, but the what is he, a kicker or something? Some sports
Yeah,
person.
Burkett. He's the Chiefs kicker. I think it's Burkett.
Right. Well, who? Another. Well, Mr. B. Let me say, back to the point that what that you were making too about the culture wars. When you have that mentality, people better wake up, because losing, right? There really is things that we couldn't have even imagined. There's being such a rollback, and the logical progression is, in many ways, not being able to vote. I'm thinking about women in particular. So, regardless of, who you are, just you want to be careful. And we need to, what is it? Like Barney Fife says, nip it in the bud nipping. That's what we're about in November. It's got, because this has got to end, because this Handmaid's Tale culture war is no joke. I mean, it's just, if you it's almost like name a freedom, and they're on the attack with Project 25. No, just pick a freedom, pick one out of a hat.
Yeah, and
And,
then
go ahead. I'm sorry.
remember. No, go ahead. But remember, way back last year, I'll have to find it. I'll have to search my own timeline. But I mentioned, yeah, because I try to keep you guys abreast of these right wing extremist kind of, groups and dark money. 501c3s with, these kind of crazy culture war ideologies. The Remember I told you about the city of elders?
Yes.
Yeah, Jenny Cohn, who does, the Lord's work when it comes to these dark money groups and stuff, posted some more information, because I have been searching. I have them on Google Alert, and there are very few stories about it, but they're so extreme that, they feel that every level of government, that starts with city council to dog catcher to, state legislatures, all the way up to, that every one of them should be Christian, and every one of them should be, and the laws should be changed um, to follow one of the testaments. I guess the new. So if they're Christians, hopefully it's the New Testament they're following, and not the old.
And they don't
Lord
want to
help
mess
us.
with the old, because that's a vengeful God. But what I want to say is,
Yes.
the other thing, though, I just want it before I let this go. This idea of the culture wars, you know, I'm going to speak about the library, and that was one of the things. I mean, in terms of, what do you call, stereotypes, etc., people tend to like libraries and librarians. And so, I mean, that's another angle too, because where people might want to, I still see that crap about banning books, etc. You really don't want to, that we're another facet of education and democracy, preserving democracy and intellectual freedom. So that, of course, is an area where I am upset. And the book banning started basically in the educational sphere, but it is moving into the public library sector. And at the same time, they are also, there's conversations about arming librarians. And I kid you not, I mean, asking librarians to do things, and also asking them to do things that make make no sense whatsoever. So again, like I said, it's the ignorance and this knee jerk response, anti-science, anti-education, anti. And I do think the other thing that I wanted to add to that too is back to boots on the ground. I do think I think we're tired of it. I mean, just that the cult of the former guy, they can be as angry as they want to be, but I mean, anger isn't the answer. And even with people doing protests or what have you, because that's just a whole lot of anger that's just, it's definitely misplaced. And I don't, and it's associated with anti-Semitism in ways that I can't even understand. And so to add to that too, you were talking about culture wars and abortion and this idea about Christianity. I mean, that is a denial of, in the Jewish faith, abortion is something that is not, I mean, that is not a controversy there. So, I mean, again, just how dare they? Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm not making any sense. I'm,
No, I
I'll
I
stop.
understand. And while you were speaking, I thought of an article that from the Guardian that I put in the post. I think you will enjoy it. I think everyone will, because it just really does give some depth to the issue of what this culture war, the effects that it has had on our education system, and how teachers are having difficulties being able to teach certain things because of the books that are banned in the libraries. And it's just this ripple effect that goes on and on and on and on. And I sometimes, like I said, I feel like they're doing these things because it sounds good. It's a good slogan. It's a good, one issue to be passionate around, and then they just take it to the extremes, and then it comes back to bite them, kind of like this abortion with the IVF and that kind of stuff. So the voter suppression, it seems like that may be starting to come around to bite them too, because I did read a story where they are actually now encouraging some of their areas to look at what they call ballot harvesting. You know how they scream about some of the things that we had in communities where souls to the polls, for example, or group voter registration and those types of things that are often associated with communities that may not be as involved in the political process. But when you bring it to them and you make it easy, which is what we've always done in churches and community centers and things like that, in Black and minority neighborhoods, and those were the areas that they attacked. Remember how they attacked and eventually got Acorn, dissolved when President Obama was running. So now they're interested in this. And that, to me, is a sign that they are afraid, that they recognize they don't really have the numbers. They may be having the attention, but I don't think they really have the numbers. But I see Joseph and Jima Riri with their hand up, so I'm going to go to them in that order.
Thanks, Misty. I had to comment about what 2K mentioned. You and 2K mentioned about Harrison Butker, because his appalling misogyny aside, there's something that a lot of us have been talking about, and the fact that it's to many gay men, it's very clear that he is very deep in the closet and is self-loathing. And and that's dangerous to the rest of us in the LGBT community. Somebody, I mean, I have met people like him before that are so deep in the closet and use their self-hate to harm the rest of the community, and that's what he's doing. And he had the nerve to equate the celebration of pride to the deadly sin of pride. Well, if you I went to his Instagram page, and it is a testament to the deadly sin of vanity. And I mean vanity, vanity, and more vanity. This guy, he really thinks the world of himself, apparently. But I they always say it's the ones that scream the loudest. So stuff was already starting to come out. I'm sure more things will. but it's like you said, Misty, it's the greater part of this Republican culture war on everybody, really. Everybody that is not a white heterosexual Christian male, which, Harrison Butker can, protest all he wants, but he is not heterosexual. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My gaydar went absolutely off the charts. So that's that. I kind of wanted to add on that, but also like what 2K said about the anger, and something that I mentioned in this space last week, and I forgot to mention in my space on Saturday. Um, when I was thinking about the anger that I felt in 2020, particularly my worst moment was during the protests over George Floyd's murder, when the former guy tear gassed peaceful protesters and had the nerve to stand and hold a Bible for a photo op. That nearly finished me, and that was probably the angriest that I felt during that 4 years. And so I want us to remember how we felt during 2020, when he was leaving us to die, with COVID, when we were hurting because of this, egregious act of racism, when George Floyd was murdered, and we were hurting as a country. What did he do? He went and threw gasoline on the flames of racism. So I want that anger. I want that to be a motivating factor for us, so that we don't have to go through something like that again. And also just remember the happiness, the elation we felt in that Saturday in November of 2020, when it was over, when it was determined that President Biden and Vice President Harris had won. I'll never forget it. I had gone and spent a couple of days in Palm Springs to kind of like get away from things for a while, and I was getting ready to come home when I saw on I think it was on this app that the results had came in. I think it was what Pennsylvania we were waiting on, and that it was over. And I tell you, it was an absolute party in Palm Springs. Just the elation that people felt, and I want us to remember that, and I want that to be a motivating factor for us, because can you imagine how wonderful it is going to feel in November if we can get President Biden and Vice President Harris another term? It's can you I was thinking the other night, the spaces that we can hold to discuss the reelection, that's a motivating factor for me. So I want all of that to be a motivating factor for everyone else.
Couldn't agree with you more, Joseph. I do have to go back in my mind sometimes and remember that huge collective sigh of relief that we all got to take. And I am praying and hoping, I'm very hopeful that again, November 6th, we will again be taking a sigh of relief for saving our democracy. But it will not be done without our efforts, our dedication, because it really is going to require all of the same people in this country to come together and to bring others along with them. There will be, and there is a lot out there that are not, they don't know what's at stake or don't fully understand it. Some of them know and don't care. They're willing to gamble. And I saw this interesting article. Again, I'm going to have to find it. I'm so disjointed today. But it was a survey that was taken of the youth. And I don't know like what area. And it may have even been in the UK, because it was earlier in the week, or the latter part of last week, that I was reading it. But I feel this is true just because of some of the crazy spaces that I have ear hustled on. That people like this ties in again to our education. Like when we, and without going through all the evolution of education in this country, we kind of got to a place where we could like agree to teach on facts. Now we have been fighting for some time on, you know, some of the facts to, include or exclude. Some of them just get an honorable mention and no depth to them. But I think we were at a place where we could definitely just kind of agree on facts. But and to also teach the idea of democracy and have a general consensus and idea and understanding of what that is and that it is, a good thing. But remember, Charlie Kirk and his entourage, they've had 12 years or so to be working on college campuses and feeding these ideas to them, where now there is a scary percentage of youth who are just so about democracy. Like, it might not be bad to have a military leader. Literally. I mean, can you just really imagine at this particular time? But I think that sometimes people are so far removed from history, or they become numb to it, because I think in the same article they were talking about the historical documentaries and things that were coming out, and that people just kind of get numb to it and the images. But my God, you, like I said, I just can't imagine someone thinking that having a military leader is a good thing. But there are, and I've heard people really say this, and I think that they believe that. And that part is kind of scary to me. But I know there are a minority, but I don't want them to grow. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. Gima Riri, you're up next, and then we're going to get to a place where I'm going to wind us down. So if you would like to come up and join in the conversation before we do that, I would encourage you to do so now. Gima Riri.
Thank you. I got my pen and paper out and was writing down. The one thing I forgot to say earlier is that tonight on Rachel Maddow, she's going to be interviewing DA Fonnie Willis.
Yes, yes, yes.
I forgot to say that earlier. I'm so excited to hear from her and to see what the interview is all about. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up too was earlier when you were talking about the Supreme Court, Misty. They literally are above the law, and they are now going to decide whether a former president is above the law. That's what's scary to me because Justice Roberts is not holding any of them accountable. That's what frightens me about our Supreme Court right now. The other thing, the whole white evangelical Christian thing, it is all based upon a fake white Jesus. My ancestors, when they came from England, they were fighting about being Protestant, being Catholic. The Catholic Pope had more power than the king, rah, rah, rah. And then they came over here. Not only did they come over here, but they literally started to make up their own religions, and they're taking the Bible and twisting it and interpreting it into a way that benefits them. So it is not surprising to me to see that these white evangelical Christians would take someone like an antichrist, like, the former guy, and try to rise him to power. And it's just so sickening and twisted. Mitt Romney. I'm sorry, but like I have a whole hard thing with the Mormon religion. It's my personal feeling. I just don't believe that Joseph Smith went into the forest and found gold plates that said this is how you're supposed to live. I just don't believe it. Again, to me, it's another way of trying to make Jesus white and American. And it's not real to me. Let's not forget, it was Donald Trump embraced Putin. He embraced Kim Jong Un. He sent his son in law to embrace the Arab countries, especially Saudi Arabia. When that prince was put into power, they arrested the whole family into a hotel to put him into power, and somehow Jared Kushner benefited greatly from this and doing things that he really should have been charged with, in my opinion. There was no Middle East peace. It was there to make money and to give protection to his family. And then if you look at what Pompeo did with the former guy with Afghanistan, they literally put the Taliban in power, knowing women's rights were going to be affected, knowing those women weren't going to be able to be educated, the same kind of garbage that happens in Saudi Arabia and other countries that are authoritarian. So they knew what they were doing, but then the whole party turned it around to try and blame that it was somehow Biden's fault, the withdrawal from Afghanistan. No, Trump and Pompeo did that. Let's not forget that.
And
We
that's
literally,
where the media, and that's what I love that you brought that up, because until these recent conflicts, like in Israel, with Israel and Hamas and Ukraine, they were trying to use hit this strategy and this turn of reality to pin it on Biden, when all he did basically was implement a plan that had already been put in place before he even took office. And his team, his transition team, was not even allowed, they would not even meet with them. So they had no inside knowledge of this. They literally walked into that office, into the White House, blind, and it was on purpose. And I think, again, during a pandemic. So I just think that his vice president, his entire cabinet, I'm not saying they're perfect, but I think, considering where we are at this place in time in our country, they have done a phenomenal job of navigating us, keeping us upright and straight, making us better in the places that they could. Um, you know,
absolutely, absolutely. And if you remember, when Obama was elected, he was very honest. And he said it would take about 8 years to get us back to the place that we were at. And he was absolutely honest about that. And it's the same thing with Biden and Harris. It's going to take another 4 years to get us where we need to be because of what the Republicans have done.
and they
And
don't want to see us get there, first of all, and they don't want that to be true, and for people to see that. The one thing that they hate, that they're fearful, first of all, of losing power, period.
yep,
But they really, really are afraid of Democrats holding the reins of power for 12 years, because they know what that, and, with the
absolutely.
VP Harris, it could be 16 years. They know that they are done for. And that is, they do have some solace in the judiciary that they stacked in place for them there. But President Biden has done a great job in, balancing that out as well, because I think the last count was 150 judges or so that he had appointed, and how they had stopped Obama. Many of the judges,
Yep,
certainly the Supreme Court ones, but the ones at the district level and others too, that Trump appointed, should have rightly been appointed by President Biden. Not, I mean, by President
Obama.
Obama.
Obama,
But
absolutely.
that's when their obstructionism went into full gear, you know.
Absolutely. And lastly, I just want to touch, I think 2K or someone was talking about it, but our teachers, our doctors, the fact that you now have states that want you to check with their governor or your state legislation about whether you can do your job or not is really frightening. Our teachers are our children's adult, at least 40 hours a week. We trust them to teach our children the truth. And our doctors are the ones that save our lives and keep us healthy. In no way, place, or shape or form should they have to check with a governor or a politician on what they know is right and what they do for a living. It's just absolutely ridiculous that these kind of laws are being pushed, and Moms for Liberty are trying to uproot. They're really trying to dumb us down. And that's the message I keep giving people. But thank you.
Well, thank you. I really do appreciate it. And yes, they are. And remember what I said. an uneducated populace is a very easy populace to control. And that's essentially what they're working to do. So, sister, did you want to chime in here? I'm gonna start wrapping us up, but I want to give 2K and Joseph an opportunity for some closing thoughts before we go.
No, I think what I wrote down after 2K was talking about Kamala Harris, when she said that what they're really saying is essentially that they don't support Kamala Harris, and I wrote down oftentimes it's because they're not supporting Kamala Harris in the first place. That's the point of it. I think that we're not really the media is not addressing. And that's partly because they are accountable and responsible for the atrocious coverage that they're given, either by completely not giving coverage or by giving unfavorable coverage, and that goes not just for Kamala Harris. It also goes for Joe Biden, and anything that this administration has done that is progressive and forward thinking and helpful to the communities across the country that need it the most. It's very rare that I don't know what's more effective. Sometimes I'm wondering, like, is it more effective if somebody is pushing back on in an on-air interview, or is it more effective if they're countering it through news stories that are printed online, or in real in the hard copy paper that people still get. And I think it has to be a mixture of all of it. It can't just be one or
Yeah,
the other.
that's my thought, because
You
I
know?
think that you have to, if it's happening in real time, and
Yeah.
certainly if you're in the media, then you should be pushing back in real
Right.
time. And that's what I loved about Brennan, Margaret, on
Right.
Face the Nation, that she did with JD Vance. And she tends to do that. She has command of the facts, and so I appreciate that she does that. I do hate that she seems to always lead with a freaking Republican, but
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, and but the problem is that they do it, and they do it just that once, and then that's it. They're done with the story. They have moved on. If it were a Democrat that were doing it, it would be complete wall to wall coverage for weeks and weeks on it. They would never hesitate to bring it up. They would bring it up from this day until November 5th, every single day, at least once a day, at least once an hour, at least once per print, per article posted online in regards to any
Well,
politics or
that's what
whatever.
Joseph's Space was in
Yeah,
part about, because that is essentially what they're doing. It's
yeah,
trying to frame a narrative and to shape a mindset, but we can't fall for the polls or even the opinions of some of these people on
no,
air, and some of them that are the journalists writing for some of these legacy papers, and others, that we have to be savvy and vet the information. We have to seek information and try to be informed, and to inform others when we see that they
hmm,
don't have command of the facts. That is, if they want to be informed, because some of them, they're in that cult mentality. And I appreciate what you said, Jima Riri. I feel like that with a lot of religions, but we're not going to get into that, because I came from a religious family. But I think about Scientology being started by a science fiction writer, and so, I mean, it's just crazy. And the behavior of many of these MAGA folks is very cult like, and that's a whole, that's a topic for another day. And it is one that I would like to address, because that is part of the problem that we're facing and that we're dealing with. And it is the part of the problem that, even when we win, will not go away, because, these cults and stuff, they become, like religious ideology. And you can leave the Catholic Church, but you don't leave all the teachings that you've had all your life. And I know this, when you're brought up in religion and in a religious faith, it takes time to distance yourself from that and to undo the indoctrination that has occurred while you're part of it. And that is what has happened in this country, is that there is a population that has been indoctrinated for a while. Some of them never change back from the 60s or whatever. They're just carrying it through. They were having it simmering in the caves and the basements. And now they're indoctrinating another generation. And as long as it's allowed to continue, it will be there. But our job is to put facts to truth, to continue to do what we do, like having these conversations every week. It's so important. And I just want to thank all of you, those of you who have come in and joined in the conversation or just listened in the gallery. We do see you. We appreciate you. And it means a lot because, as I said, I know that the members of this community, whether you actively, speak in our space or not, I know your behavior and your grasp of understanding. You know what's at stake. So you are doing the work. You're here to get the information, and you are doing the work in your real life. And that's where it counts. That's where it counts. So I really, really appreciate and love you all. This community means the world to me. I tell you, I'm so fortunate that we, even in all the hellishness that goes on here, I'm thankful that we are still able to get on every Monday and do what we do. And don't get it twisted. Any day that we're not, we have made provisions to be able to do it elsewhere. So know that. And that's why I encourage you guys to go subscribe to our YouTube channel, because I can do the same thing there that I can do here. And the minute I am not able to do it here, trust me, I will be, because this is an area of work that I have chosen. Like I said, we all have different skill sets. And so we work in the venues that, that we feel most comfortable, and feel our talents fit the best. And I have found a sense of comfort. I'm not a teacher, but I have found a sense of purpose in being someone that tries to provide information and bring people together to facilitate conversation that, hopefully inspires us all and encourages us all. So I just want to give a shout out to those in the gallery and give 2K an opportunity for some closing thoughts. Jima Riri, and then Joseph and my fabulous co-host.
Hey, I can't be profound, but I will add this. G. Mariri, there is also discussion around the LDS church being formulated so that what's his name, Joseph Smith, he was married to a 14-year-old. Polygamy began there. I'm just saying, and there are people who actually um, count those occurrences as impetus for the creation of the religion. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that that is something that circulates in popular culture. So, yeah,
Makes sense to me because they even had a branch that sect off. There are different sects even within that, the fundamentalist and so forth and so on. So,
yeah.
it,
100.
mm-hmm.
And we can see some weird stuff going on. It's not in LDS, but come on. Who's that? I don't know the name, but I'm sure you've heard about, there's someone who's talking about his God-given right to marry a 12-year-old. And, there,
Oh
there's,
yeah. Oh,
there's some,
Gino down here in Brentwood.
there you go. So there are some unusual, I'll call it, tendencies circulating in this crowd. So I wanted to lift that up. The other thing that I want to say too is I am heartened by our exchanges here, based in education and also grounded in heartfelt concern for each other, and heartfelt concern for what happens to all of the people in this country, not just one particular group. And that is something that sustains me daily, weekly, hourly, etc. And that is just it means everything. It means the world, and I'm so grateful to be in your good company. And I had one other thing that I wanted to say, and I've forgotten it. So, anyway, let me sign off. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you. You've been a delight. I'm always happy that you can join us in conversation and bring your wit and humor and certainly your knowledge. So thank you today for doing that and being a part of the conversation. So, Jima Riri, you're up next.
I just like to say that we would not be the great country we are without the diversity that we have. And I want everyone to remember that every time we're hating a fellow American because of fear or because of indoctrination, we are helping to weaken our country. What separates us is that freedom that is at risk and is being taken away right now. So that's my last words for the day. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Certainly, we here in this group recognize the freedoms that are at risk, and we have to keep reminding others because sometimes people memory hold things like and over time in that process, there are active measures to reframe those narratives, just like the lost cause. I mean, you lost the Civil War, but you want to make it, you try to overthrow your government. You try to, you instituted a coup basically, but it is often reframed into something where the meaning is changed and inverted to have a noble significance, but we need to make sure that we keep the true narratives of these events, their meanings, and who the characters and the players are behind it, those funding it, those leading the charge out, the foot soldiers. We need to keep those foremost in our mind because they will be um, put away very quickly if we don't if we count on the media and we see what they're trying to do to textbooks, and even if they're in textbooks, how they would, disallow certain things. So it's important for us to have these conversations and this flow of information. It's a history telling of sorts because what's going on right here today in our regular lives and in politics will be in the history books, and we don't know how it's going to come out, but we were here. Let's tell our story so that, the media doesn't have full control of how it gets told. So, who's next? Is it Joseph? Yes.
Thank you, Ms. D. Well, thank you to you and Soul Sister for another wonderful space, getting us started off the week on the right foot. One thing I wanted to add from my space, because I'm noticing it again today, was that how the algorithm is hiding people that we follow, and I had to do a name search again for the president and vice president. So keep that in mind. If you're not seeing tweets from the president and vice president, that I think there's something, something, mischievous going on, and that's putting it mildly. So just keep that in mind. If we got to do the name search, we got to do it. But please, keep highlighting the president and vice president's messages, because you never know who's going to see their tweets. And then again, just to remind everybody, just ignore the noise. There's a lot of distractions, a lot of obstacles right now, and just keep that the motivating factors that I talked about earlier, how we felt in 2020 when things seemed to be the most, when the gloom just seemed to be never ending, and then how wonderful it felt when we got the news that President Biden and Vice President Harris were elected. And that's going to keep us motivated all the way to November to get them across the finish line so that we can keep this going. We can keep our democracy alive. So, thank you again, Miss D and Soul Sister, for another wonderful space. And with that, I will land my plane.
Well, thank you so much, Joseph. And again, I appreciate you being here, always helping us to start off the conversation, and for the work that you're doing, having these spaces with a focused topic that is timely and relevant. And um, last Saturday space was really wonderful. I'm looking forward to your next one. And I just want to applaud you and encourage you to continue to do that. You're a natural. You do it well, and it's important that we continue to have these conversations. I can't even believe there was a time when I was doing this every day for hours, Monday through Friday. It was a lot. But, when I
You did it
realized
well. You did it well.
well, thank you. But I realized it was not sustainable. So I had to find a place and a way to do what I did that would be where I would be able to be consistent and sustain it. So this Monday space is that for me, and it allows me to also do other work and things that I feel like kind of helps me bring good treats and things back to this space and conversation as well, because it was not enough for me to just talk about democracy and to just vote. I considering what's going on here in my state, it was very important to me to be able to find a way to have an impact here. In my state. So I'm grateful to the organization that I found here that allows me to be really involved in that process as well. So, all right. Joseph, I'm looking forward to reports. Where was it again? I forgot. You told us at the beginning.
I'm heading to Tucson tomorrow afternoon.
Okay.
Uh, I'll be there. Like I said, I'll be in my office Wednesday and Thursday, and then I fly back first thing Friday morning. So it's gonna be a very very quick trip, but I'm hoping that at least driving around, I can maybe gauge a little bit of the temperature, what's going on in Arizona right now. Fortunately, Peanut County, where Tucson is a pretty reliable Democratic area. So that's one area that we have to actually run up the score in November to offset some of Arizona's more rural counties that tend to vote more Republican. But more on that as after I get back. So thank you for bringing that up.
No problem. Well, thank you. And so, with that, we look forward to the updates. I am going to give it to my co host.
Thank you, Miss D, and thank you everyone for joining in today's advocacy arena. Um, I want to talk about segregation. That was a primary focus for us in regards to Brown versus the Board of Education. So segregation, the definition, the dictionary definition is the action or state of setting someone or something apart from others. And then if you look at the synonyms, it says separation, apartheid, and discrimination. And if we look at the origins of this United States, it has always suffered from segregation. Colonialism, when they began discovering a continent that had always existed, and conquering it and beginning to rule over it, it was based on segregation. See, they wanted to be apart from, so separated, but they wanted to rule over, so apartheid, because they were outnumbered. They were a minority wanting to rule over a majority of people who had been here, who had already claimed this land as their own because it was theirs. And then discrimination, because they called those people then savages. And then for independence from England, it was they wanted to be separate because they felt like they were under apartheid rule, or under an oppressive rule, rather, from England, Great Britain, and they felt they were being discriminated against. So then we move on to chattel slavery, where, of course, we already know exactly what that meant. It meant separation, apartheid, discrimination, Jim Crow, civil rights movement, and now our current fight for our democracy. So there has always been this mindset with certain sectors of our leadership to want to segregate people and keep them under an apartheid rule, and it's all based on discrimination. And we see it in many aspects. We see it in our schools. We see it in the food deserts that are taking place in our underrepresented communities. We see it in our voting laws. We see it in, the dissolution of DEI. We see it in many myriads. There are so many examples that it is too hard to name. And that is basically exactly what Project 2025 wants to not only encourage, but also give more power to. And so when I hear or when I see people who don't seem to understand that they're railing against a system taking place in other countries, but they're not paying attention to what is happening in their own country, it tends to frustrate me. Or when I see examples of it happening in our own country and we see people making sure that they keep others down, as with this union vote, it frustrates me because they don't even recognize that what they're doing is not just taking away the rights of someone that they know. It is also going to definitely be taking away the rights of themselves. But this is the game, and this is the politics of especially this new orientation of the Republican Party. I don't even know what to call them anymore. I think that they will have to rename themselves or reinvent themselves because currently they have no sense of accountability or responsibility to their constituents, at least before they could claim to have some type of, we're trying to be fiscally responsible, we're trying to make sure that the federal government doesn't overstep on states' governments and rights, but it is not so much that anymore. Now it is simply about oppression. It is simply about putting the stamp of apartheid here in America and calling it something different. And if people are not paying attention, which many people are not paying attention right now, they're so frustrated with the fact that the former president has been campaigning for this November election since the last presidential election in 2020. And there is a great responsibility on those of us who have been keeping up with things and who have been involved and have put our hearts, our souls, our boots on the ground and our definite work, our faith in acts, to then educate the others. And that's a great deal of responsibility that should be a responsibility not just of the country's leadership, but also of the media. And so we find ourselves to the point where, yes, we end up having these moments of being frustrated and being sitting in, different spaces and being angry and reacting. And that is exactly what they want. And believe me, I am no saint. I fall prey to it as well. But we have to remember that when we are angry, we are less focused. We are not as proficient at forming our thoughts, keeping our plans in motion, and combating the misinformation with wits. Instead, we're just reacting. And this reactionary mindset is very helpful to the other side. So while we may fall into that ditch, we can't lay down and roll in it. The boots on the ground is a very, very effective way to not only get a better understanding and gauge the temperature of what is actually happening, and how people are really thinking in this country as we move into the November elections. It reminds us and grounds us in the fact that while we fight here on social media to make sure that people are informed so that then they go back and take that information back to their communities, it is not the actual picture. It is just a snapshot, the same way a poll is. Because social media is like a poll, it's what somebody is feeling in that moment in time, how they're reacting to that news story in particular. So we have to remember that what we're always up against in this country, what is always at stake, is our democracy, because there is a huge factor of people who want to make sure that segregation and apartheid and discrimination remain a part of the fabric of this country. And we have to make sure that they do not win. And we do that by having these spaces, by being involved in our local politics, our state politics, our federal politics, having conversations with real people, not just online, and putting our faith in our works. So I'm always searching for different ways to be involved. And let me tell you, this year has been a little bit of a struggle. I think I've been looking for opportunities to be directly involved in things that in my state politics, and I have been very disappointed and frustrated with how the state of Michigan, because when we say that Michigan is in play, Michigan really is in play. Now, that is something that is truth. I can tell you that from my own experiences of being out in this community and speaking to a variety of people and having very real conversations. So I don't take for granted that Michigan is going to stay blue, go blue, always be blue, because it was a hard fight to get here, and it's going to be a hard fight to keep it. And so we have to always, and I have to always remember that while I have that moment and I sit down and I sit back and I allow the sickness of this total state that we're in to overwhelm me, and it is just but a moment in time. It's just a snapshot. And this space and being with all of you is an opportunity to remind me and to remind others that we are not in it alone and that we are not hopeless. So I want to thank you all for just providing an encouragement that you probably don't even realize you're giving me personally. And I'm always humbled to be among you. And I want to thank you all for being here with us today. And let's continue the good fight, and let's keep uplifting each other and spreading the good information. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I don't have much to add after that. I just want to thank all of you for being here and being part of the conversation today. We will gather and do it again next week. And hopefully, me and my co-hosts will be feeling much better at that time. But look at the information that we posted in the Jumbotron on our timeline, and I will be posting some more things. But I'm going to leave you with these words from the late, great Representative John Lewis. Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. So never ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble necessary trouble. So I thank you all for coming in here today, making some noise with Soul Sister and I. And I know that you're going to go out in these Twitter streets and in real life and get into some good trouble, necessary trouble to save our democracy. So I'll see you all back here next week, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central Time. Thank you for joining Soul Sister and I today for a lovely conversation, those who were active and those who were actively listening. I appreciate you all. So with that, I'll leave you with peace and blessings.